is pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Have to return some videotapes. 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 Videotapes.
Hey, welcome back to Strange Glow Video. My name is Justin. With me, as always, is Alec, and looks like Darwin's on camera tonight too.
Yoshi's ear is right here as well. He's on my
okay.
lap. Darwin's sitting on the table in front of me.
Alec has all the here kitties in his lap.
Yeah.
In his vicinity. So tonight is a way to celebrate Thanksgiving 2024. We are going to cover the 2002 classic feature film, really a film that ushered in the modern era of superhero movies, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Classic, a very good film.
Here with me is the DVD copy, which I bought as a child.
Nice.
That's why it's the full screen, because as a child, I was like, why would I want it wide? I want the full screen. I did not know any better. I was 11 or 12.
Yeah, you're like, I don't, why do I want these bars on my TV?
Shame.
Yeah, go back in time and kick your own ass.
But it's a pretty cool, honestly, disc set still. Look at all those special features. None of that is plot summary. It's all special features.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to talk about some of these while we're here. It's a cool thing to talk about, I think. There's like subtitled factoids you can put on the movie that are like pop-up video. Remember that shit?
Mm-hmm. Who doesn't? Yeah.
There's a couple different commentaries. There's a commentary with Sam Raimi, Kirsten Dunst, Laura Ziskin, who's a producer, and Grant Curtis, a co-producer. And there's a sound effects commentary. Darwin is now trying to get the
strings on your hoodie.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Music video, Chad Kroeger featuring Joshi Scott, Hero. Sum 41, What We're All About. TV spots, theatrical trailers, filmographies, and character files. DVD-ROM, character feature comparison. Record your own commentary. Countdown to Spider-Man 2. That's all disc 1.
Very nice.
Disc 2 has HBO Making of Spider-Man. Spider-Mania, an E! Entertainment special. Director profile, Sam Raimi. Composer profile, Danny Elfman. Screen test, Tobey Maguire, J.K. Simmons, and CGI Spider-Man. Costume and makeup tests, gag, outreel take, conceptual art, historical documentary, Spider-Man, the mythology of the 21st century, the Spider-Man comic archives, Rogues Gallery, the loves of Peter Parker, comic book artist gallery. So some of that stuff's going to be like, but some of that stuff's really awesome. Like when you have the HBO making of the E! Entertainment special, like having that stuff on the disc, like you may have saw that stuff on TV back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You may have been watching it, but you haven't seen it since, unless you have shit like this, or it randomly comes up on YouTube from some jackass like me ripping it off of this and uploading it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with physical media. I think people easily forget, right? Some of the digital platforms provide it, right? Apple is pretty good about doing it if you buy a movie through Apple, or if you're like connected through your Movies Anywhere account. Sometimes you can see the special features, but not always. And so like discs, physical media are so good about having all the extras that are lost to the digital streaming era. And like most streamers just never have any of that stuff available for you, which is always a disappointment.
Darwin over here also trying to chew the headphone cord. Hey.
He's like, I have not said you can speak yet.
He's a nuisance, man. He's whacking my hoodie cords.
Chewing your cabling. Yeah.
He's like, fucking hey, pet me, bro.
Yeah, so I had a really good time watching this. I hadn't seen this in a minute, right? I watched them all, a couple years ago. It's probably been 3 or 4 years since I've watched them all, though.
I did a VHS review of it earlier in the year.
Okay.
I've actually heard, I need to look into this and see if there's any facts to it, and if there is, how much and what could be done. But I think there is from what I've heard, the way they framed the widescreen and versus the full screen, it might be the full screen DVD or it might be just the VHS. But I've heard that it actually has a little more on the bottom.
Oh, interesting.
Like they matted it for certain stuff. And I'm like, that's very interesting. Because if you then added that, you'd get a frame that sort of looked like the Ford logo, like a sideways cross almost, you know?
Yeah.
Super
That's
weird.
fascinating. Yeah, so watching this again, man, I was so hyped when this movie came out. Spider-Man was my favorite comic hero in the 90s. Like, that was the books I read. Like, I didn't have a lot of money to read comics with, and so it was always Spider-Man books.
I have most of your comics still from that era too.
Yeah.
So a
You
lot
know,
of
it's
like the symbiote stuff,
yeah.
the clone stuff, some of the reprints of like the first issue and stuff.
Yeah, the Clone Saga is such a good saga. I really hope they eventually make an adaptation of that for the film somewhere, somehow, because that's so good.
Yeah.
And then like Planet of the Symbiotes and all that, like that was really cool. And then I had some fun issues there. Do you still have the Green Goblin issues,
Yeah, there's 2 of those I have.
or is that Hobgoblin? That was like it was its own series.
Yeah, they're Green Goblin.
Yeah, so somebody else took up the Green Goblin mantle and was like kind of an anti-hero, essentially. And like that was a really good run. I enjoyed. Yeah, man, some really good comics back then. And then, you know, the Spider-Man movie has basically been in development hell since for fucking ever. And the only reason that Sony and Columbia even ever got the rights was because when Marvel was like going bankrupt in the early 90s, they sold off all the film rights.
Yeah.
And we just-
Spielberg was trying to get it done in the mid 90s too, and then was like, I'm going to do Titanic instead.
Yep. And this is one of those movies that always had like the fan casting.
That was
and
James
everything else.
Cameron. I don't know what I'm talking about, but
No, yeah.
you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I meant.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, you know that.
Yeah. So, oh man, this movie has so many good cameos in it. But let's just talk in terms of general stuff here, right? We cover this because there's obviously the little Thanksgiving scene, but there's so many parallels between Batman 1989 and this.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is the film score done by obviously Danny Elfman for both. So now, but that being said, there's also just like moments and sequences and things like that that really bring it back.
I was going to say, I don't know if it's just me being a kid and being more easily manipulated, but some of these movies, they have like, they feel more grounded in an emotional sense. And some of that is fully captured in Marvel. Like they go for some of the emotional stuff in DC. They do a lot of tragic stuff, but it never ends up being like, oh, this is super sad. It's just like, I don't know. It's kind of still just action, but in the dark, I guess, is how it feels.
Well, you think of this movie, right? And I watched this movie, and it took a lot of fucking balls for them to not have Peter say that he loves Mary Jane back at the end of the film. He's like, no, I'll be your friend for you forever. And you're like, damn, that's fucking
cold.
That's a way to end a fucking movie there, right there, man. And then the whole conversation, you know, where he goes into with great power comes great responsibility and announces himself as Spider-Man. Is like, man, you know, and that's after we've heard this speech from Aunt May where she's like, you know, Peter, when you were 4 years old, you're like, is she an angel? Like this whole setup, they just give it to you, and you're like, man.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's I don't know. Watching it, it's like the Sam Raimi isms of it all is so much more apparent with each watch going forward. I feel like, because it's like, goddamn, this is just Evil Dead Spider-Man. Like the way the cameras move.
Yeah, well, the camera angles on this are so much fun. Like it's a blast to watch.
And the comedy too, like the comedy that's in these Spider-Man movies. It holds up. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's a good balance there. Now, what I did find hilarious at the beginning was like all the high schoolers looked way older than they they, especially Flash Thompson. Flash Thompson looks like he's 25, 26 years old, like playing a 17-year-old. I'm like, this guy looks like he's getting into a bar fight, not a fucking school lunchroom fight. What is going on here?
And he auditioned for Peter Parker.
Oh, okay.
So what was he thinking?
Yeah. Now, Tobey Maguire, I would say, was a pretty good casting choice here. Like I've enjoyed his portrayal of that, but even still, he looks.
Yeah, he looks like 25s too.
Yeah, he's not as bad as Flash, just because of his hair is a little bit more moderate, and I think, and Flash just kind of has this like older guy look onto it, which is a little weird. But
Like Toby has a young natural face, like a baby face, but it's still like that guy's not 17.
yeah, that guy's not 17.
Tom Holland is a twink forever, so
Yeah, I don't know. That dude just looks naturally like a baby face. Like it's crazy seeing
Yeah.
him. Like he's like almost in his 30s, and like he still looks like he's super super young. So, which works. Like I really enjoy Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I know some people love it, don't like it, whatever else.
I have my issues with things about it, but I kind of just accepted that for what it was and enjoyed it in that universe.
Yeah, well, that's what
Most
I've
of
done.
it was it went back to that, like having Iron Man in the first movie and having like he didn't make his own suit and stuff like that. Like you just kind of have to kind of accept these things.
Yeah, well, yeah, they just try to make it make sense in the storytelling they're doing there for that instance. And then also the Andrew Garfield movies, like they were okay. I've enjoyed those. I don't watch them a ton, but actually that was probably the last time I watched the original 5 Spider-Man movies. And I say original 5 just meaning pre-MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Was leading up into Homecoming. So or No Way Home. What was that? That was No Way Home. Yeah.
It's fucking A. Their titles are kind of nondescriptive. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're like
Homecoming's the first one, and then it's Far From Home, and then it's No Way Home.
Yeah. Always trying to get it right. So
he's shoving his face in my armpit right now.
Mm-hmm. So I love watching this. As a Ghostbusters fan, as a fan of New York City, as some of these sites that we've been to, right? You think about some of these sites. Last time we were in New York, back in March, we went by Columbia. You did the Spider-Man scene. We recorded your copying, Willem Dafoe's take on "I'm something of a scientist of myself."
Yeah.
So that was very good.
Beautiful.
I love that. I just love seeing Columbia University there, though. It looks so nice.
Well, it's just great because they're both Columbia Pictures movies, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just subtlety, right? And then this is something that I, for a while when this came out, like I've always been a Ghostbusters nerd, but I would never stopped and like watched and be like, oh, when he says he's going to the downtown library, I'm like, is he going to the main branch of the New York Public Library? And sure shit, he is, right? And there's some shots there. Now, granted, it's drastically different angles than what we see in Ghostbusters.
Oh, for sure.
But you see the
you see the lion's heads.
Patience and virtue back there, and you see it. And I was like, oh man, that is so good seeing that there. And that's where Uncle Ben drops him off.
Yep.
And then we get some fucking classic cameos in there, right? You get Randy Macho Man Savage, and I'm not a big wrestling guy. I never really cared for that stuff, but I know who they are. Like it's one of those things. And
Especially
Macho Man,
the big ones.
Yeah, and Macho Man was like huge, and it was a big deal for him to be doing this movie at the time. And he is fucking roided out, man. He is.
I was about to say,
ripping this movie.
In terms of wrestlers, he's probably my second favorite. I'd say number 1 is Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Yeah,
who's in They Live and It's Always Sunny.
Yep.
For those reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And Macho Man is number 2 because of Spider-Man.
Yeah. I gotta say, I like Hulk Hogan not because of his wrestling era, but because of his fucking stupid movies he made.
I mean, I would if he hadn't been so weird and MAGA lately.
Yeah. I mean, I can remove that and be able to watch Suburban Commando, him and Christopher Lloyd watching that. It's fucking so good. It's
Is that the
so bad.
one-
It's so good.
Or one of the villains has like a steel head or some shit.
Yeah, and the PKE's in that movie too. So that's one of several movies that use that prompt.
He was in I think the 4th Three Ninjas movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was a 3rd or 4th. I can't remember. I only watched the first one mostly and the second one a couple times as well.
Yeah. No, he did like another Hulk Hogan did another like 80s movie that was kind of cheesy, like Suburban Commando, that I quite enjoyed just for the nostalgia.
Mr. Nanny was a good one.
Yep, that's what I was thinking of.
And then Gremlins 2 is my favorite Hulk Hogan appearance.
Yeah. Classic.
You think the Grimsters could stand up the Hulkster?
Yeah, that's good stuff. Before he went off the fucking deep end.
Before his wife was banging one of their teenage son's friends.
Yeah, that's some weird shit, man. Bruce Campbell, though, as the fucking announcer in the wrestling ring. That is so good. And that is such an, like, it's so crazy how young he is there. Just like looking back and seeing him there, like he's in his fucking prime, and it's so awesome.
It's like seeing him in Congo. You're like, God damn, he has the face of like a stereotypical movie star. He should have been everywhere.
Mm-hmm. He really should have.
Great too.
Yeah.
So I soak up all the Bruce Campbell I can for sure.
Yeah. I loved how much screen time he had in that, because the other movies is more like shorter cameos, just little bits, but this one was kind of a longer one. So I was like, okay, so good to see that in there and have him have that conversation. And then, obviously he gets to be the one to phrase the term Spider-Man, the human spider. He's like, that sucks. So, and then, at the end of the match, he, introduces him again as Spider-Man. So it sticks.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. And then we all get a little tragedy. I'm watching this and I'm like, I would have done what Peter Parker did too. I'd have been like, yeah, I'm letting him steal your money.
Oh,
If anything, I'm going to stop him and steal it myself.
Yeah,
I'm going to Spider-Man, bitch. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
that's why I shouldn't have superpowers. I would just be a supervillain.
Well, yeah.
At least in the eyes of the public trust.
Yeah, in the public trust. I was going to say, I'd probably fall more in the anti-hero thing, or like, generally I do like to do good for people, but like rich people, I'm like, nah, fuck them.
Exactly. I'm like Catwoman. I steal from rich people, and then I save people occasionally if like, some real shit's going down.
Yeah. You're empathetic to human condition, but at the same time, you're like, there's no such thing as a good billionaire. So
yeah,
here we are. If you got money, we're coming for you.
Yeah,
man,
so
you watch this entire thing though, and I just think I feel like in a modern Marvel film, tons of people die, but we don't necessarily see it and focus on it. But the fact that the robber trips on that pipe and falls out the window to his death is amazing.
Yeah.
That really gave me some serious Batman vibes.
Well, see, that's the thing. You remember back then, and even like early Marvel days, all superhero movies pretty much killed the villain at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first one that I can genuinely remember where they didn't do that is Dark Knight. The Joker doesn't die.
Mm-mm.
I'm sure there was one before that, to be honest. I'm not saying that was the first. It's the first one I remember chronologically, but like it started to happen from then on a little bit in Marvel stuff, but like still, even with like Black Panther, their villains killed off in that.
Yeah, well, Marvel is so hit or miss with what they're killing off. Like taking out Killmonger was disappointing in that story, but here there's so much of the Batman stuff and like some of these side villains. Like I just loved it that this guy fell out the window and died though.
Yeah.
And it looks like Spider-Man did it, so then they're looking for him.
Yeah. It's a good scene. Some of the CGI looks a little bit wonky these days, but it's like it still works. I mean, just because it's always looked that way to me. So
most of this movie looked really good, and I was really happy with how well it held up.
What format do you watch this on?
I streamed the digital copy that I own. So
this is probably Blu-ray quality.
Yep. And for the animation on there, like the the CGI, the spider, like is one of the first things we see, and that looks so good. The web that it's coming down, like that is so beautiful.
Apparently they actually painted spiders for that. So the spider is like a real spider painted with makeup. And I don't know in how many shots. I'm sure there's CGI doubles of it.
Combination, yeah.
But that's how you make stuff look realistic is combination, multiple practical CGI.
Well, even when you zoom in like on his hand and it's biting his skin, like that's a scene there that like I thought wasn't going to age well, and it aged surprisingly well.
Yeah.
Now there is a few layering things that I noticed throughout watching this, especially like when the Green Goblin's like on his glider in certain spots where you can tell it goes from a practical effect to a CGI effect because of how the glider's moving. Mostly at the parade scene. Some of that's a little bit more noticeable because you're in a bright daytime saturation setting, and so that's a little more noticeable to catch. But Spider-Man himself looks great in there.
I feel like this was supposed to be a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, but it wasn't like.
No, and that's another thing that brought me back to the Batman, because it brought me back to the Batman '89 parade scene. And
those are my balloons.
Yeah, how come no one told me I had one of those things? But the vibes there, and then Danny Elfman's score is so good, but it legit feels like a sequel to his Batman scores. Yeah. Like his scoring here, like feels like it's in continuity, in canon with that. Like I felt like had he done the work for Batman Forever or Batman and Robin, like this score could have easily wound up in one of those movies, because it's very similar vibes and how he wrote those superhero scores. And he's really, when you think about it, like those really set the emotional tone for a lot of these films. And
I will say I really like the Batman Forever score as well. It's completely different, but like there's things about it that are just great.
Yeah. There's a fair amount of good kills in here, man. Like the Green Goblin is pretty fucking brutal. When he goes over to the kills the test pilot and then kills everyone in the bunker, like everyone that's going to get rid of him. I love that. Then we get the classic Spider-Man theme being played by the guy on the acoustic guitar in the subway. Like the Easter eggs in this movie were so good at the time. Like, and we think Easter eggs now, which Easter eggs can be amazing, but they can also be obnoxious, right? Sometimes like they can be distracting, or sometimes there's too much. But in this one, like when this was an early version, like first major Spider-Man motion picture, you fit some of these things in there and it works really well. They weren't going to use that classic theme song, but they use that in the montage where we kind of see that, hey, Spider-Man's here, and this guy's kind of writing the old TV song or the old theme song from the TV cartoon.
Yeah.
So I think that works out pretty well. And it's just a brief clip of it. It's not the whole thing. They didn't shoehorn it in over the top. And then the references, man, the world building they did with this. They mention Eddie as the photographer for the Daily Bugle, specifically by name. And we also hear that Dr. Connors fired Pete, right? Even though we didn't really get much of that. We hear the Dr. Connors relationship thing. We get to that, but, it's not, fully developed. So there's this world building going on and setting the clues around for you.
And he shows up in Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
And I don't remember if he's in Spider-Man 3.
But I think he is again, maybe. But then we have Ted Raimi has his cameo.
Yeah,
right?
Wearing that at the Daily Bugle, right?
Yep, he's in there with
I think he's in all three of these as well.
Yeah, he's getting yelled at by J. Jonah Jameson, which is awesome. Elizabeth Banks plays the desk clerk for the Daily Bugle there.
Yep.
And so like you're like, man, the casting on this was so fucking awesome. So many good characters in there. Supporting cast was great. Oh, going back to the CGI and like thinking of all the deaths. The other death scene that looks silly, and it was probably almost done that way intentionally, was when the Goblin throws the pumpkin bomb on the balcony and kills all the board of directors.
Oh,
and like they flash up into like skeletons really quick and then disappear. Like that looks like it was done cheesy on purpose intentionally, so it like wasn't frightening for like kids seeing this movie, because this movie was really made for a wide audience.
Yeah.
And that looks silly, but like at the same time it's endearing because it's it's cheesy on purpose. Like that's real Evil Dead vibe of like, how would you have something disappear?
Horror combined with Three Stooges, which is classic Sam Raimi.
Yeah. Macy Gray plays herself in this, doing the performance at the, what do they call it? The Unity Day Festival, which looks like it's in Times Squares and it's like sponsored by Oscorp, like this whole thing, right? It's pretty good world building in there. Like when you think about the script of this, pretty pleased with how like the subtlety of it all worked together overall. Like I've never really thought about that as much, but now that we're watching like the MCU and you're thinking of like all the world building that's in there, like this movie really sets so much up in such a great way. And then J. Jonah Jameson is a piece of shit, but he is actually looking out for Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Denies knowing Spider-Man, which is like the only good deed he's ever done. You know,
He's
that
an
was fun.
honorable man, probably something he was
Yeah.
saying.
Mm-hmm. And then we get the fire in the building scene where, you know, he saves the baby and then he goes up and fights the goblin in the fire, gets cut. And then we get to the Thanksgiving. The whole reason we watched this movie, to celebrate Thanksgiving. And this is a Thanksgiving movie.
My biggest takeaway during this scene this time around was Peter Parker's a moron because he has no realizations in this scene.
No, they leave all those.
Only Green Goblin.
Yeah, like Green Goblin is way smarter than Peter Parker in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, even at the end, like the only thing that saved Peter Parker was his spider sense, which I love how they foreshadow that at the beginning, right? You know, they explain like, oh, the spiders can like sense, you know, like almost as a spider sense or whatever.
Yeah.
So much good stuff. But I love that battle, that fire battle. The choreography in there is pretty badass. Like that's a good fight scene with the fire. Pretty awesome.
Everybody was doing that Matrixy shit too at the time, and they didn't do it too extensively, but they leaned in a little bit, but
they slowed things down a little bit, but it wasn't like obnoxiously slow, right? It was
that
like
one shot I can think of where he's doing like almost a backflip or something, and there's two of them.
Yeah, he does like that rotating twist to get away from and it looks like a pumpkin bomb, but it just turns into be these little blade gliders or whatever. I don't know what you want to call them.
But I think that style is perfect for like comic book movies because you're trying to think of like.
Well,
like
that
I always compare like the weird framing of comic book movies sometimes to comic book panels. Like,
yes,
that's what some of these people are trying to achieve, and sometimes they do it well, and sometimes they do it well and get criticized for it. Like when they did Endgame and had that scene of all the women together, and everybody hates that. That's totally something that would be in a comic panel, dude.
Absolutely. Just like this scene of Spider-Man rotating, right? You'd have the motion lines around him and then getting cut. And I love how he gets cut, you know, and then goes back to the apartment. I love how Norman brings a fruitcake. Like, come on, fucking crazy guy brings a fruitcake. I love it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
No, it's great. That's a good scene in general. And again, Peter Parker is just oblivious. He's like, oh yeah, bike messenger knocked me down.
Yeah, and he's just
Norman's
lying about it.
What? And he's like, yeah. And he's like,
how did you say that happened? Like, yeah, he doesn't notice it at all. Like, you don't recognize. It's like every comic book movie though. Just like with Batman, you're just like, you're talking to all these people, you don't recognize these fucking voices. Like, who the fuck are you talking about? Come on now. But you suspend disbelief for that. You know, it's fun. It
sometimes makes sense. Batman makes more sense because usually they do at least a little bit of a voice, even if it's just, you know, Robert Pattinson or Michael Keaton style. But there's a scene in this where like Peter Parker is talking to Mary Jane, and then immediately she leaves and is attacked, and he like intervenes as Spider-Man, and then is talking to her, and she's like doesn't recognize his voice. I'm like, that was like you were with him like 30 seconds ago, bro.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, and you talk to him face to face all the time. You wouldn't tell me you wouldn't recognize his chin, even though it's upside down.
Right.
Come on. Like,
yeah. So,
but that whole scene, I remember like that was like everyone loved that whole upside down kiss. Like it was like such a big
I think it was like the Nickelodeon Kiss of the Year, that award, like whatever those awards were. I can't remember. Kids' Choice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a pretty compelling scene, but it's, just kind of in that love story there that they're settling us. So,
And we hate love.
yeah, apparently so. And then obviously, one of my favorite things in this whole scene is when May is saying her nightly prayers and the fucking goblin comes in and fucking makes her finish the prayer. I'm just like, God damn,
Yep.
that's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's brutal.
Deliver
So
us from evil.
yeah. Yep. It's good.
Get
You know what's-
Spider-Man come out to play.
Yeah. What's fascinating about the Spider-Man movies in general, right? There's no real discussion of Peter's parents in this movie at all, right? Whereas the Andrew Garfield movies rely heavily on
Hey guys,
the Parker family legacy.
be nice.
And then, you get a little bit. It feels like they don't really talk about his parents in the MCU at all either. Like, it feels like the only. He's just blocking the camera. He's like, fuck you, man.
They're both trying to get on my lap, and they just swatted at each other when now they're at a standoff. Like,
Yeah. He's like, I'm just going to shut this shit off.
he is. He was sniffing the keyboard like, which button is it?
Shut this off. Shut all this off.
There he
Walter
goes. He
Peck
goes
over
back on
here.
his little cat tower now.
Yeah.
Darwin's glaring at him.
Yeah, he's looking mad on this camera, man. That's awesome.
He has some resting bitch face anyway, but yeah, he was swatting at Yoshi like, get the fuck up. That's my lap, bitch. Anyway,
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
The Thanksgiving scene is pretty fascinating too, because we see like Norman Osborn is like a fucking woman-hating piece of shit. He's like, shit, they're just after your money. You're like, quit fucking hoarding your money and making that the only thing relevant about you, dickhead.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you have to offer the world. Obviously, he's a scientist too, but that's not how he's coming across. He's coming across as a blatant fucking nut job, which is good though, because Willem Dafoe is so good as this character.
You know how much I sacrificed?
Uh-huh.
When the vapor hits the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Just the way he delivers all these lines is burned into my skull just as much as shit from Batman 89 is. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's has the most quotable lines in this movie, right? There's a few Spider-Man ones, but for the most part, this movie, the quotes are all Norman Osborn.
yeah.
And he does such a good job of being like the crazy person talking to himself with the mask in the room and everything and building that kind of legacy. James Franco, man. Knowing that he's a piece of shit in real life and then watching this movie, I'm like, are you a good actor or are you just good at being yourself? Because it seems like you're just good at being yourself, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, at least he's not in this one like as much. Like, he is kind of early on and then a little bit throughout, but I feel like he's in this one a little less. Or maybe I was just paying less attention, but
it's kind of subtle there, right? He's not over the top in there, but there's just enough of him to be in there annoying you with MJ that you're like, what?
you stop chewing that cord.
And then we get to this final act. Like, this last act is so good. We get MJ gets kidnapped after Harry goes to see his dad, and like they reconcile, and his dad's like, I want to make this right for you. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, house. And it's like almost like endearing and sweet. You're like, oh, you're a piece of shit kind of a dad. You don't really like your son because he's not as smart as you, but oh, here you go. And now all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to go take out another smart guy that wouldn't team up with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I do love that too about this, is that Norman Osborn's first thought process is like, hey, this guy could be useful. Like he's going after him as a partner, kind of someone else, like a kindred
Well,
spirit.
here's the thing. I think the Goblin is like a split personality that kind of is
Mhm.
sometimes fully taking over, sometimes only half taking over. Like, so I think
Yeah.
in the scene in the Thanksgiving, I think he's kind of triggered into taking over.
Yeah.
And that's
He
why
is.
he's a colossal fucking dickhead. Although I still think he probably holds similar opinions. He just wouldn't express them that way.
Yeah.
And then when we get to what you were just talking about, which was something I forgot.
Oh, yeah. They're, when he's talking about, well, he's talking shit on MJ, but he's also trying to recruit Spider-Man is what I was going on about, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's exactly it. Yeah. His interactions with that. And yeah, I lost my train of thought.
No, it was good. I mean, I really like that he's trying to recruit him, but to your point, like, he is this dual-sided character where there's almost this potential for him to be an anti-hero, but like this crazy character just overshadows that, like eliminates any of the possibility of that. It's pretty fascinating. Like he gets so pissed off when he sees the blood in there, but he can't find him. So he's like, okay. And then when he sees the blood on his arm at the table, he just fucking loses it.
Yep.
And then like Peter is just clueless. Like you don't understand this guy sees your cut and wigs out. Like you don't, they make him, well, but he's also like a freshman in college at this point. So they do a good job of making him young and naive. Like, yeah, he has these great powers, but he's also just kind of a fucking nitwit at times.
Yeah.
And clearly Norman Osborn has been fucked over enough in his life that he doesn't trust anybody. So he's always looking for.
I guess it might make sense that Peter is like book smart, but has no social cues.
Yeah. Not even paying attention to that or catching on to that, which is
He's like,
fascinating.
I got the cranberry sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Had to beat an old lady with a stick, which is a
Yeah.
good line.
Uh-huh. Because, he's dressed as an old lady.
Mm. Of course, the appearance of the Evil Dead car.
Yep. And that's his personal car, man. That's been made it into so many movies.
Yeah.
I love that, though. That's just such a great hint. Nice little nod in there. So we get to this final act, and they're fighting on the bridge, and that's a pretty intense scene. And then the New Yorkers come in there, and they kind of do the New Yorker thing, which is kind of the hero moment. Which post 9/11, I think that really made a lot of sense. And I almost feel like since they had to redo the part of this movie, and I'm not sure what part they where that original storyline would have gone with the Twin Towers and the helicopter being caught in it in the webs between the two buildings.
Yeah.
Like where would that have gone compared to here? Like I feel like this was like the New Yorkers just like being resilient with them throwing shit at the Green Goblin, being like, fuck you, man. And that was pretty cool. So, they kind of saved Peter at the last minute, and then the boat's down there helping. So very much a New Yorker spirit movie, and giving back, helping each other. I like that.
I think Spider-Man 2 exemplifies that in that train scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it amplifies that for sure. I felt like they did a really good job pivoting in this movie for what they may have had in store. And, they did a good job of capturing that, or at least hinting at it there. But when they get to this abandoned building, it's fucking intense.
Yeah, no, it's a good scene. The fighting is great. Like it's choreographed great. It looks great. There's a little bit of that Sam Raimi horror element in it. So
Yep.
And slapstick almost.
Well, I mean, that set could easily be an Evil Dead set. Easily, because it's like all bricks, it's all gritty, it's gray, it's dark. You could easily have Deadites in that scene coming out and attacking Peter, and it would be amazing.
And long-term fans know that the first time we reviewed this movie was a long time ago, and I started using Spider-Man sound bites. And one of them is from this scene, because it's the funniest thing in this movie to me, is when he sends his glider after Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man jumps out of the way, and he goes, "Oh." And then it just rams into him.
Yeah, killing him.
Just the cutting, like that's classic Sam Raimi editing. And,
So the other scene in there that actually reminded me of a different hero franchise, Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. So when that wall falls on the Goblin,
when Spider-Man pulls it down.
Yeah, and he pulls it down, and then his hands like rise out of that. That's just like when that bridge collapses on Super Shredder, and he puts his hand up like, dude, nothing could have survived that. But his arm, instead of arm, goes limp. The Goblin gets back up and comes to fight it. Which that fight was so good because Spider-Man was just getting beat and beat and beat, and then
by an old man.
Yeah, well, they both have superpowers, but
Well, for sure.
but that was so good. And then the fact that the only reason that Spider-Man isn't die there is because the Goblin is perfect. Like, oh, I need your help, Spider-Man. Like distracting him from that, but the spider sense still works despite the lack of his maturity and realizing he's being duped.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that Spider-Man realizes he's going to get attacked. It's that Spider-Man senses he's getting attacked, not realizes mentally, but the spider sense saves his life there.
And also, he's like, it feels like he's having a moment of, should I kill this guy? Or like, I probably shouldn't, right? At this point, I should learn to not kill people, even though he tried to kill like a lot of people and did kill people. And then he's killed for him, and he's like, all right, well, problem solved itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just go drop this body off at home and
then
pull out my Playboys under my little mattress in Queens.
Yeah. Well, we get to that, but like Peter's having this issue here, right? Where he just can't just be done with it. And what I mean by that is he could have just fucking left Harry's body there. Or I mean Norman's body there in his suit with the glider and been like, whatever. Yet he decides to take his fucking body and dump it on the couch. What the fuck happened to the glider? Did he leave that there? Like he had to fucking pull the glider out of his dead corpse to take him home.
Mm-hmm.
Like now, luckily he's Spider-Man and he's got super
He also
strength.
stripped him out of his suit.
Yeah, so he stripped him down.
You heard the rumors about Willem Dafoe too. So Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, saw some shit.
Yeah,
some freakishly large and weird looking, according to rumors.
Yeah, well, a guy named Willem Dafoe, you'd have to be his Willem Dafoe to find out.
Dangle Dafoe.
Yeah, only one way to find out. Never rub another man's rhubarb. Yeah, and then obviously we get the scene where Harry sees Peter in there and it's dark, so like you're like, did he recognize who he was? Because
like it was borderline like you're thinking, oh crap, does he recognize him? And he doesn't. Clearly, because in the next movie, continuity wise.
Yeah, but then by Spider-Man 3, he's like, you knew this was coming, Pete.
That's your favorite line from that movie because that was in all the marketing.
Yeah, that's the only fucking line. Well, I mean, it is there too. It's funny because like Spider-Man 2 like just teases that, and they're like, okay, so he's having a little bit of a mental breakdown, but we get to that stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, he slaps him in public in Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
So like, pictures of your pal Spider-Man.
So I think he's suspicious there. Like it's dark enough, you can't really tell. But then obviously he's like, "You're the only thing I got for a family now," which is weird because, like, if you've got this split personality disorder and it runs in the family, which it very well could for them, and then doing the body enhancing drugs that they do probably just exacerbates that. Seeing your friend still be your friend and then seeing him in costume just enrages you. So fascinating stuff there.
Yeah.
And then we get to
that Peter Parker. It's just great that Peter Parker's not like a sex offender because I feel like the Spider-Man outfit would be missing a very crucial part of the fabric.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. And he would just be flopping in the wind as he's dangled over New York City. Literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
He'd just be taking wild peas and shit.
This movie ends on a fucking dark note. And I'm here for it, right? I don't think enough movies end on a dark note. This feels like a Empire Strikes Back ending for a movie. For a first movie, that's pretty impressive.
I wouldn't call it that. It's not that impressive, but it is like he's not with her anymore.
Well, he never was. He basically decides that he'd rather protect her than risk her life. Which is
she's still going to end up in the situations regardless, so.
Yeah, but I mean, clearly she's heartbroken about it. He's missing his uncle. They're at this funeral, so it's just a very fascinating ending.
Spider-Man will pay for what he did to my father.
Yeah.
I swear on my life, Spider-Man will pay.
You're like, and why are you telling that to Peter Parker? Because you think that it's him?
He was
Man,
stolen from me.
It does seem like something that like an immature 19 or 20-year-old might say after they lost a parent. Like, oh, this guy's going to pay. You're like, your dad's a fucking psychopathic murderer. He fucking killed a ton of people.
I don't know if he knew that at that point yet.
Yeah.
Because doesn't he discover the Green Goblin stuff at the end of Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, I think it's kind of foreshadowed in the second act, I think maybe, but they just kind of leave it alone.
I was about to say, I don't think it ever came out in the public in that universe. Or did it? You know what I mean? Like, I'd have to rewatch 2 and 3 and...
Yeah, I don't think so. So, interesting, though, nonetheless. But yeah, I had a good time with this movie. The ending, like I said, ends on kind of the somber note because it's not all happy, cheery, you know. And some superhero movies do that a lot more now just because you need variety.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you can't win on like a hero's note every single time and things don't always go the way you work out for it. But I feel like this is a pretty good call to end this movie that way. And like, there's this level of arrogance with the way this movie was done, just knowing it was going to be successful. Right. I mean, to end it the way they did, they really had to be feeling pretty good about being like, okay, we're going to do at least 2 of these.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, looking back, like, that was something I did notice. This time around, that it's like, you know what? Mary Jane's in enough of this movie, and they're flirting so much and stuff. They're not ever actually together in this movie or anything. They kind of only have that one scene, and then she's kidnapped. And then this scene at the funeral where he's like, I can never be with you. It's too dangerous. I'm going to walk away and, like, go listen to some Midwest emo.
Yeah, well, which there's plenty of that. The soundtrack to this, I think some people loved it, some people hated it.
Some parts of it and Spider-Man 2. There's a few good songs and there's a few terrible, fucking god-awful, horrendous abortions.
Yeah, like the hero song from this movie or whatever that they play is such fucking terrible.
Hero
fucking terrible butt rock singing. Like,
yeah, no.
I fucking hate that song. It's terrible. Like, the credits were on, and I like to watch credits just because, you know, I like to respect the people that have worked in the film and do that. But that song was so bad, I was like, fuck this. I'm just not going to listen to it.
The Spider-Man VHS has a
music video or some shit for that
after the credits, and there's a preview at the beginning of the VHS, and it's like, coming up, special Nickelback music video. Stay afterwards. And I put the ad for that in my VHS review of it. And then immediately after, I put the clip of Captain America saying, no, I don't think I will.
Yeah, no, that's on point because, yeah, nobody wants to see that shit.
Right. I'm like, thank God, the end and not the beginning.
Yeah, could you imagine they stuck that at the beginning of the movie? Ruining it. People have been taking that movie back to Blockbuster, been like, no, I can't even watch this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're going to get fined for not rewinding. You're like, no, we didn't even get to the fucking movie, man. Like, there's still trash ahead. You got to get through this garbage. No, they knew where to put it at the end. That's the worst fucking post-credits Marvel scene they've ever done. Fucking Nickelback music video.
Right.
Please.
That's the next villain?
It was. It
Give me
was.
this back.
They're assaulting your ears. Yeah, so it's such a good film. Really glad we watched this one. I hadn't seen it in a minute, and just being able to take it in and really enjoy it
makes me want to watch 2 and 3.
Oh, for sure.
And then I might as well go to the unofficial 4. You know what I mean? Continue that story just a little bit, at least.
Yeah,
I think I'll do that. See how that works as a quadrilogy.
I was gonna say, would you watch the Andrew Garfield films too?
No, because you could do that separately too, like watch Amazing 1, 2, and then that one. That'd be its own trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah, those are I didn't hate those, but they just weren't. It's hard to put a point on it, you know, because they did different stuff there. They had the different love interest with Gwen Stacy and kind of going that route.
They did the web shooter thing differently, the way it's supposed to
Yeah.
be, which
Yeah.
that's my biggest critique of the Sam Raimi movies. But like at the same time, I can ignore it. I think we all learned to ignore it early on, and so that's why it's okay.
As a long-term Spider-Man fan and like reader of the comics, like I've always loved that Parker was like able to do his own engineering for that stuff, right? And I was like, is he book smart? He's a scientist. He's got all these skills going for him. So I did appreciate that. But that was one of those things that I never hated that. It never pissed me off. I was like, okay, I was fine with it. But it works. But I love it how you have, I love the No Way Home scene where they're talking about it. Like, yours just comes out and he's like, yeah. They're all like grossed out by it. Like, that's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yep.
If I was him, I would all the time be using it in inappropriate jokes. It's about all I'd use it for.
That's, yeah. Well, you might hang around for a little bit or something, but
Yeah.
you'd have to have your own website called onlywebs.com.
This guy's going after these again.
Yeah, he's done with it. He's like, you, sir, have not played with me enough. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up. I do hope everyone has an excellent Thanksgiving, and we'll see you back at it next week.
Have a good night.
I'm going to have to
pleasant
say
tomorrow.
good night.